Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we're looking at the front seat covers and associated hardware for the Triumph TR4. So this is a bit of a continuation video as I've done some detailing the TR4 seat covers. As I'm sure you're aware, especially if you've tuned into that video, the TR4's had 3 different versions of seat covers spanning 2 different seat frames over the course of the production run from the factory way back when, and this is effectively the second variant. So effectively, just to give a very basic overview of it, and I'll use seat frames as an example. Originally, when the TR4s were first started in production, they used the identical seat covers and seat frames to the TR3As, which is this version here, that kind of semi bucket seat, and then the styling carried on identically to the TR3As with the horizontal left to right pleats. They then moved on to what we refer to as the early spec TR4s, which use the same seat frames as the TR3As, so again that blue spec there, but they changed the actual design of the seat covers. They made the most obvious difference: they made the pleats vertical or front to back depending on the cushion and the backrest. But apart from that, they're identical, and the seat hardware for the most part was identical as well. There was a subtle difference in the springs potentially, but I'll go over that when we get to it. So that was the kind of middle version seat, which we refer to as early TR4, whereas the very first incarnation of seats, the TR4, was the as TR3A set, i.e. they are identical to the TR3As. They then moved on to the later style seats where the framework was completely different. It was a brand new frame. It was tubular metal frame. They were very much square and they had a detachable back panel. So they moved completely away from that setup there. So basically the first 2 incarnations of the seat covers on the TR4s used this same framework here, the semi-bucket framework, whereas the later versions used the different tubular frames with these square backs on them. Just give you a basic look, although this is a TR3A. They're the TR3A seats, so effectively they're those midnight blue spec there, the original ones. So they were used on the very first TR4s, and then they transitioned to this design, but using those seat frames, and then they transitioned to the late style, which are these ones here, which, as you can see, are very much square setups on them. They had vertical piping, but much narrower than these. Vertical pleating, but much narrower pleats than these ones here, etc, etc. Yeah, that's good for you. So you can see how square they are, and that panel there was at the back there. So bear that in mind, and of course do check out the other related videos. I've done a few now showing the different seats and specs of them all. So as I say, this is the sort of second incarnation, what we refer to internally as the TR4 early style seats. Now, it's worth noting at this stage that this design was quite rare. You didn't really see many of them. You saw quite a few of the identical to the TR3A sets, i.e. that blue set there, and then you see loads of the late style square back seats. So bear that in mind. But these ones, few and far between, but obviously they did occur. So what I'm going to go over in this video is obviously the seat covers, and then elements of the seat hardware and whatnot. So bear with me. This specific set has been done in black with white piping, which was an original colour scheme from the factory. It's worth noting that the majority of TR4s would have left with white piping on their seats throughout effectively. However, it was only the outer pipings that were white. So on this particular set, it's the outside circumference of the cushion base there, but the in part there is matching in black. And then the backrest happened to only have 2 elements of piping on it, and they were both white on there, which ties in with what you can see from that late style one, the outer piping in white there. It's worth noting this book here actually does reference the TR3A ones with white piping across there, which is incorrect. Almost certainly that's a aftermarket seat that's been made incorrectly. As you can see here from our original one here, the inside piping there was blue to match the name trim there. Obviously we can do piping however you want, but that's generally speaking how they left the factory. So black with white piping, and these have been done to a Leatherfaced specification, which was again a factory option. Basically for seat covers we can offer 3 different versions. You've got vinyl at one end of the scale, you've got full leather at the other end of the scale, and then the middle ground option is what we refer to as leather faced, meaning the bits that touch your body, i.e. the facings of the seat, They are leather with the backs and surrounds and retainers in vinyl. And that's what this version is here. Now, it's worth noting, we refer to that as leather-faced. Other companies out there refer to that as leather. And sometimes on heritage certificates or some of the informative TR websites, they'll also refer to it as leather. That should not be confused with our full leather option. Our full leather option is an upgrade option. Not many companies in the world offer it, where we don't include any vinyl pieces. Everything is in leather. So bear that in mind. But like I say, this is the much more commonly seen leather-faced version. So just to go over the basics, it's sold as a car set, so you get a pair of cushions, a pair of backrests, and you get these loose materials here for retrimming the framework, which I'll touch on in a second. Cushions, fully sewn. All of this top panel here, so the pleated panel, side panels and the front panel are leather. Then the sort of surrounds here, which is sewn in 3 pieces on this particular one, and this retainer here have been done in vinyl because it is a leather-faced spec. As per all of our seats which pleat with pleated panels, they are genuine tuck and roll pleats. So the sewing actually goes in and out of the actual foam, which is pre-slit. A lot of other companies out there do what we refer to as fake pleats, where you're effectively just folding the material slightly and then sewing down. And it creates the impression of a pleat, but without actually having any of the substance or depth to it. So bear that in mind. Obviously pleated on to the foam there as normal, but then these side bits and these front bits are also foamed. And then it also has this semi retainer on there, which helps during the trimming process. So bear that in mind, that's all pre-sewn on. Piping, like I say, is white. Now we use leather cloth for our piping where colours allow, which is the majority of our colours. Leather cloth, also known as vinide or Rexin sometimes, was the original material used generally during this era of production, although actually Triumph tended to use plastic piping on a lot of their seats, but that's neither here nor there in the grand scheme of things. The other main manufacturers of seats during this era did use leather cloth. Now, leather cloth is much more suitable to piping than vinyl, but a lot of other companies still use vinyl out there for one of 2 reasons. Either they are blissfully unaware that leather cloth is the better material to use, or more likely they are doing a cost-saving exercise where they don't want to have to stock 2 very, very similar materials. So it is worth noting that we use leather cloth, and it is much more suitable to piping and for edging of carpets. And please do see my blog post and my other videos detailing this. Effectively, it's a bit thinner, but a very robust material, and it has a very robust face to it. So if you scratch down it when it's bent over such a small circle, piping core rubber, you can see there, you don't get any scuffs on it. Whereas vinyl, you'll find that will actually grip because it's wrapped over such a tight space and it's thicker. It makes it more bulbous. You can easily scuff vinyl piping. Leather cloth piping is much better in that regard. So again, do check out those posts. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's one of the main reasons that we are known within this industry for our quality and workmanship and using suitability of materials compared to other companies out there. For us, it's not just about making money, it's about actually making sure we provide the best kits in the world for the best restorations in the world. Anyway, so that's the piping. Like I say, in white, but we can do it in whatever colour you want within reason. So you get a pair of cushion covers. Now, before I go on to the backrest covers, you also get materials to retrim the framework here. Now, depends. The majority of the cars that use this framework here, they would have had 1 tilt and 1 fixed, which is how we standardly supply this kit. But obviously, if you have 2 of the same, do let us know and we'll just update the material allowances there. But they're effectively the bits that go. Just use this as an example. That's a big long piece there that you see with the kind of ears poking up, and it goes all the way around the frame. And then the shorter piece retrims that back section there on the tilt frames. Obviously, for fixed frames, you don't need all the pieces because they wrapped all the way around effectively. The backrest cover wrapped underneath, so you don't need that short piece for the fixed frame, so bear that in mind. But yeah, they're supplied as standard in the kit. These are obviously vinyl. There would be vinyl in obviously the vinyl kit and also the leather-faced kit, but for a full leather kit we would supply those in leather, and we would skive them down, which is the process of thinning leather to make it more applicable and applicable rather. Right, backrest covers. So again, just to show you what would be leather, these side bolsters here, left and right, and then the pleated panel down the centre there. This retainer here is vinyl. The kind of finishes on the underside here are vinyl. The surround here that joins the front to the back is vinyl, as is the back there. As per the cushions, obviously the pleated panel is genuine tuck and roll pleats, as with all of our pleated panels. And then it gets a couple of loose vinyl strips sewn within there, which again help during the trimming process. They kind of organically tried to update and repurpose some seats. So this is a prime example because they use the same seat frames but changed the styling of them. So in theory this is meant to be a better version than TR3A, but I'd say given its short-lived lifespan, they probably moved away from that idea pretty quickly. And we trim a lot of TR3As. We've only trimmed a few of these particular ones here, and those sort of retainer elements there are head scratchers, shall we say. They cause more confusion than they do benefit, so bear that in mind. But yeah, we obviously make the parts as per original spec, so they are included there. Again, piping in white on this one, and 2 rows of piping, and they match basically all white piping effectively on them there. So that is the actual seat covers. Now let's go on to the seat hardware elements of things. So the seat hardware, we sell the seat foam padding kit as a kit, so it's enough to do a car set, so 2 seats worth. And it consists of these 3 pieces for the cushion bases, obviously times 2, which basically you have the banana shape, the oval shape, and the scrim. Let's start with the scrim, and if you're curious a bit more about the hardware elements of things, do check out my other videos. I've done a dedicated one showing you the seat foam padding kit in place. But basically the scrim there is designed to go over the top of the seat springs there, and you can effectively alter the height of the spring by applying a decent amount of tension to it, then wrapping that round and hog ringing it down in place, and it will literally compress it down. Now you want to do that for 2 reasons. One, you want a bit of resistance there just for the process of trimming the seat, but then 2, we're all different sizes, different weights, etc., and you want to sit at different points in the car, so that's a good way of doing that. It also does protect the foam from the spring, but that's just an added benefit, shall we say. So yeah, it's mainly for adjusting the height of the spring there. Now, bear in mind as well, be realistic, you're only going to get a certain amount of benefit from that. But for some people, every little helps, shall we say. So you get the scrim there, which goes over the top of the spring. This then sits on top of it, and that wraps around the edge of it. Just as Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier. So you can see there, got the spring unit, it's got the hog rings, keeping the scrim in place, and the spring is now under a lot of tension there. And then you can see the foam, it's wrapped around the edge there and on top there, and you're just using a bit of basic upholstery glue just to keep that roughly in place. Don't go over the top, it's only to anchor it in place and stop it from moving. The trimming process of the actual seat cover over the top of it will provide the rest of it there. So that's the base part of the seat foam padding kit. Then you get the backrest part, which is a 2-piece kit. So start off with the easiest one. It's this bit here, which goes on the back of the seat frame there. Yeah, as you can see. Then you get the raised blue foam element of things, which is 2 pieces glued together. You just want those angling in effectively, so you might have to apply a bit more glue depending on the awaiting time, shall we say. If it's been in your box for a few months, then you might just have to apply it, but it all comes into fruition when you put it in the frame anyway there, so bear that in mind. And that's effectively the backrest element of the padding kit. So the padding kit is sold as a set, i.e. enough for 2 seats. So I'm just trying to locate the seat tacking strips, which don't seem to be left out, which is frustrating. Anyway, so the next part of the hardware would be the seat tacking strips, which unfortunately they seem to have been overlooked on the table, so apologies for that one, but I can show you part of the kit here anyway. So the tacking strips, they're sold as a set, a pair of seats, and they are split riveted into the bottom of the frame there, and then dependent on the seat that you're doing, either tilt or fix, you'll also have some on the underside here. Now, we obviously haven't put them on the underside here because you don't need them. You only need them for the fixed version of the frame, but you effectively get 3 pieces, one there, and one on the underside there. Now, they do come as standard with we supply them as standard with split rivets. However, when we trim in-house, my trimmer actually prefers to use Pop Rivets, and these have been put in place with Pop Rivets. So up to you. Split rivets is the normal way of doing it and a much easier way of doing it. Pop Rivets, if you have tooling for Pop Rivets, then fantastic. Then you can use those potentially there. I think I've located the tacking strip, so you're going to get a view of the factory here. No. Oh, that is annoying. My apologies for that one. I'm normally very good at checking everything's out as it should be, but that seems to have been overlooked, so my apologies on that one. Anyway, moving on. So tacking strips, they are sold as a car set. They're sold separately to everything else. And then finally, you have the seat springs. Now, the seat springs, you have 2 different versions, and it depends on the actual framework you've got. You can see from this framework here that it's flat, but some of the later cars, or rather confusingly, so on the early style seat covers, so these style seat covers here, but sort of middle range production, they had a recess in the framework there, and that recess was to basically adapt to a new spring which had this kind of hump section to it, as you can see there, and it, I think, was purely just there to give a bit more depth to the spring and potentially add a bit of comfort. Again, I doubt it did much, especially compared to modern day cars, so bear that in mind. But basically, the springs, you want to be making allowance for whatever framework you've got. If it's flat, then you want the flat base there. If it's the recessed version of the frame, then you want these hump version of the springs here. Now, the springs we sell individually, so you want 2 per car set, obviously, but everything else is sold as a car set. And then finally, you got the seat frames themselves. Obviously, a lot of people reuse their original seat frames, and that's absolutely fine, but we can supply you with aftermarket seat frames if you wish, and we can do the whole trimming job for you if you wish. So do let us know, or if you wanted to send us your original seat frames, we can still do the trimming work for you as well, so bear that in mind. Only other thing to consider when you're thinking about seats, these particular seats, is we also sell upholstery wadding, which is this material here. We sell it, I think, in 8-meter lengths, and that's really good for bridging air gaps during the trimming process. So it's especially for people that don't necessarily have the resources of a steamer or a heat gun. It's really good for packing out certain areas where you're getting air gaps between the material and the foam. Obviously, this seat's 60 odd years old, so we'll give a bit of forgiveness on that. But sometimes you get these little air pockets that you want to sort of pad out a bit more, and that's where wadding comes in useful. Now, most professional trimmers will be stocking a material like that, so bear that in mind. But if it's a bit of a DIY job and you don't have access to a steamer that's very useful in the trimming process, then wadding's potentially a good idea on that one. The only other thing you might want are these hog rings. Hog rings, you need a hog ring gun, which we can potentially supply as well, but let us know on that one. And hog rings are used on the underside base only, so they hog clip round the scrim, and then you'll also use them again for the actual seat covers themselves when you clip those around as well, so bear that in mind there. So I think that's covered it. So like I say, that's everything related to the TR4 early spec seat covers, which use the same frames as the TR3As. So we've gone over the covers, which are available in vinyl, leather-faced or full leather upgrade option. We've gone over the seat hardware, which is sold as a car set, as are the seat covers sold as a car set. Seat tacking strips, although mostly omitted from this video, we do supply those as well, and they are sold as a car set. Then you've got the springs, which are sold individually, so you need 2 for your car, but there is a difference between the springs related to the hump versus flat, which relates to either the recess or the flat version there. And then you've obviously got the seat frames, and then additional trimming if you want us to do them. but essentially the original frames can be used, so you can either ship those to us, or we can use aftermarket ones such as these ones and do all the work in-house for you. So do let us know, and of course do check out our other videos detailing trimmed seats and the levels that we work to with those sorts of things. But I hope you found that useful. Remember to check out the videos at the end of this one, and of course any other videos on our YouTube channel. And then please remember to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts, and of course tune in for the next video. Thanks, and see you soon.